Today, I'm going to show you my progress with the making of the sculpture, My Guardian. I'm making the plaster mold for the new arms and for these branches that stand upright and hold this body up on top of them. You can see I'm going back to the past and forward into the future because these legs were the star of the last video. Let's get started. So when it finally does come apart, it's like, woohoo! Yay! It's so exciting. I'm making the new arms. I'm using the torso and the hands that I made out of paper from the original plaster mold, making a set of arms that go outward instead of upward. Look, my arms are in the fridge. It's been so freaking hot around here lately. Even the hard plasticine was melting. Back to making mold beds, which you've seen in previous videos. I'm putting plastic in between the hard plasticine and the soft plasticine of the mold bed, and then cutting it off at the edges, smoothing everything down as smooth as possible, and then I'll put mold walls around the whole thing and pour plaster into those mold walls in order to make the pieces of the mold. I'm building the mortise and tenon joints, which will come out in the papier-mâché piece. Smooth, 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 and this is almost ready for mold walls. Some people call these things coddles, but for me they're just mold walls, and I've had them fabricated so that I can use them over and over, put plasticine around the edges of them, make sure that there are no holes for the plaster to run out through, and clamp them all together. I definitely find it much easier to talk about process than I do to talk about what my work is about. This sculpture, My Guardian, is one of the pieces in the series of pieces called Holding Up the Sky, which I plan to show starting in November 2025. The name tells you it's about guardianship, and for me it's about my relationship with nature, my vulnerability in my own body, my connection to nature in that way, and my responsibility. I believe that if I master my materials, then I can master my story. Even if the story is a little amorphous and I can't quite figure out how to write it down, I find myself being able to tell it with my sculptures. This is ready for plaster, but I'm going to show you that part when I do the branches, which is coming up next. This mold didn't cure properly. It's really soft. I don't know why, but this mold is going in the trash, and I'm gonna make this piece again. What I do is I wrap whatever the sculpture is that's going to be made into a mold in plastic so that the soft plasticine here doesn't get into the texture of whatever the sculpture is that I'm making. And these branches have this wonderful texture. And I don't know if I'm going to get that in the end with the paper, but maybe we'll see if I can manage it. So the mold bed has to come to the middle of the branch all the way through the branch. We'll make it as light as possible at the same time as making it as strong as possible. To probably take off the clips as I'm pouring the plaster up, but as I'm pouring the plaster, it's gonna get harder. The only time that I have to worry about it escaping through the edges is when it's really fluid, which only happens at the very beginning. We'll mix a bucket of plaster and we'll pour a bunch in, and I'll use a paintbrush to get the bubbles out from all the edges, and we'll mix another bucket of plaster. As it gets mixed, the bottom will get harder so it won't flow out. What I've done is I've put plasticine into these edges. It should work perfectly. So what I'm always trying to do is use as little plaster as possible because it's heavy at the end. It's really great to have these square edges. So the plaster here will create a box of plaster at the end, and it'll be easy to store and it'll be easy to use and work with. This branch does come up a little bit higher, so I'm gonna have to fill a little bit here, but I'll show you that tomorrow. I am gonna film it as I make it. Anyway, here it is, the guardian, the branches that are gonna hold her up. Yeah, it's going well. I'm excited. You hungry? Is that what it is? You're hungry? Okay, let's go feed you.
So this is what it looks like out here. I just set up the Osmo Action camera. I just bought that. Yay!
I am a little concerned about all this weight on this table, so I set up this bench with a little wood to hold up the center of the table. Danny's gonna show up and help me mix plaster. So I'm gonna do a little bit more painting this with the Vaseline and mineral oil mix. Let's put this over here so that it's in the video. Yeah, because this, believe it or not, is actually taking video of that. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, go ahead and just make the mountain in the middle. Yeah. So and now you can see the water going up into this, because there's this layer of water here.
Así está como una isla, ¿no?
Uh-huh. So there's such a strong texture on these branches that I put a lot of mold release, because I want to make sure that the plaster comes off or the branches come out of the mold. And this is my mix of Vaseline and mineral oil together. I find plaster mold making fascinating because it combines craftsmanship and chemistry and creativity, and I find it really easy to work with. It has a lot of valuable assets. It's quick. It captures intricate detail, which makes it ideal to make molds of many different things. It's readily available, it's inexpensive, it's easy to work with. Process allows for both additive and subtractive working. So sometimes I carve into it when I need to, or I actually use more plaster and add to it. And you can actually do that a long time later. Even once the plaster is fully cured, you can add to it if you do it in the right way. Plaster mold making has been used for centuries in architecture and sculpture and ceramics. And part of the thing I love about it is that I feel a connection to people who came before me. So mold making takes a certain amount of problem solving. You have to think about draft, being able to open up the pieces of the mold. You have to think about undercuts so that you're not creating a situation where the mold won't come off the original sculpture, or that when you finish and are casting into that mold, that the final cast has to be able to come out so it won't be trapped in that plaster mold. You have to kind of think sideways and backwards. Also, you have to think about clean releases, which means you have to use some kind of mold release. You can use mold soap, you can use Vaseline and baby oil. Those are my go-to mold releases. And generally when I'm working with plasticine and plaster, I'm using a 50-50 Vaseline and baby oil mix. So you have to think about the pieces and how many pieces you're going to make. Generally, I try to make only 2 pieces if I can. At least I'm thinking about making the minimum number of pieces that I can when I'm making a plaster mold. But it also still has to release from the sculpture. So you have to make enough pieces and think about where those mold lines are going to be. For me, my practical skills meet a kind of meditative focus when I'm working on these molds. So this is 3 bags of plaster in this bucket. And I think the last time it took, I can't remember if it took 3 or if it took 4. Remind me that I need to build this side up. This is like right here. So once we get there. Oh, okay. Sí, un poco más. Sí. Ajá, sí, yo creo que está bien. Oh, and I need that, yeah, and that thing, yeah, thank you. That thing. I told you about my Spanish teacher. He said, the most important word that you're going to learn in any language is thing. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's enough. Yeah, it's okay. We'll let it be with water this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Y ver cómo funciona, ¿no?
Uh-huh.
Less,
Yeah,
dense.
we'll find out. It'll be fine though, because plaster is like that. You know, plaster is so good that way. It'll maybe have some water on the top, but hopefully it won't cure so fast. Using the brush to release the bubbles from inside of the mold. The plaster has been curing really quickly, so I asked her to add a little bit more water to this batch to try to keep it a little bit more liquid for a little longer. In the mix makes it cure faster. Hotter water makes it cure faster. Constant stirring helps it not to all end up down at the bottom of the bucket. I like the outsides of my molds to be as clean as possible, so I spend a good amount of time smoothing it around with my hands and then afterwards with a brush with a little bit of water. Sí, ajá. Yeah. Okay. Sí. Yeah.
Ay, sí, se me olvidó poner la cosa abajo.
And we're having the same problem here. I'm not sure how well this mold is going to come apart because this piece of this mold is very soft. I'm very frustrated with USG at the moment because now I have to work double to get the pieces of the molds that I need in the way that I need them. And this piece of the mold will not last very long if it's that soft. And I'm used to being able to take 20 casts out of a mold easy. And this will not do that. I'll probably be able to take one out of it if it's as soft as the other piece that I just took apart. So here in a second, we shall see. It's already relatively thin. I've been trying to make my molds thinner. I never had a problem with in the US. Never. I'm not going to be using it anymore. What a pain to have to put this back together again and rebuild it, especially right now with this show coming up. I don't have time for this. Here we go. Let's see. Interesting. It's already coming apart. It's already got the line in it, the separation line open. Usually I do this with just a couple of screwdrivers. And these branches, it's possible that I'll only use these branches, this mold, a couple, 2, 3, 4 times. Oh, good. That's not bad. Future Diane here telling you that the mold is softer than what I like, but it's not as soft as the other two. And I did have to rebuild the other two. So I had a little bit of a meltdown here, but everything's good. Oh, great. It's got this wonderful texture. Watching the mold come apart is one of the greatest things ever after doing all that work to make a sculpture and then worrying about making the mold walls and the mold lines and figuring out to not have undercuts so that it can come apart. So when it finally does come apart, it's like, woohoo! Yay! It's so exciting. I believe I'm all out of mold straps, so I'm going to have to tape this mold together. Wow, it's really wet. It's not as bad as the other one. let's try to take these out of here. Not bad at all. And if I do end up needing to make a new side, they're branches, so they're not falling apart like the plasticine does. I'm going to glue these little pieces on again with Elmer's glue. I can do this in this direction so you can see what I'm doing. I just have the chisel. Just going to see if I can get this out with the chisel. Hopefully there are no undercuts. That's not working. Let me do the other side. Well, it looks like there are under that are holding this branch in. I'm gonna have to figure out another way to get it out. All right, well, that's it for now. The texture of the branches is showing really well. I'm not sure that I'm gonna be able to get the texture showing very much because we're gonna put flat pieces of paper in, but maybe if I can figure out how to put paper paste into this mold, we can get a little bit of that texture. She's working on the second two parts of the branches. I think she still has many coats because I can see the plaster right in there. So she probably has about 11 coats on the inside here to put on. They're going to be done soon in the next few days. I took out and it's just gorgeous. Okay, so I'm going to take out this other one. Oh, this one doesn't seem to be quite as easy as the other one. Oh, but that's nice. Look at that. This video has gone way over long. This is where I'm going to leave you. And next week, I'm going to show you how I assemble the whole thing and what it looks like when it's all together. And hopefully, I'll be done with it up to the point of putting the finish on it and putting the polyurethane on it. And that is not going to happen for a while because it'll have to dry for quite some time before I go ahead and do that. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching.